We're here in the Cyber Safety Village at RSA conference, where we've worked with RSA to put together a group of exhibits from the tech as well as from other organizations working to keep kids safe online. So attendees to the conference can come here and learn about these different programs and hopefully volunteer to go out into their communities and engage kids particularly in this topic.
And where did the genesis for this idea come from?
Really, it came from a meeting that we had where we kind of just talked about with RSA about like what could we do together, how could the Tech Museum and RSA work together, and from that came the idea of, well, why don't we do something at the conference, a kind of a mini exhibit to engage people in the topic, and this is actually what ended up coming out of it about a year later.
And how is this different, same, or completely new than other exhibits that you've done historically at the museum?
Completely new. So when we started this, no museum had ever done an exhibit on cybersecurity, believe it or not, and so we developed everything from scratch. We really had to learn a lot about the topic, but also how do you convey something as abstract as cybersecurity to a general population. And what we've hit on is, you'll see here, we've brought 3 of the game experiences.
I'll follow you around.
So over here we've got a game we're calling Net Builder. So this group here is building out networks. So this is a kind of unique experience where we use these.
This looks like Catan.
That was one of our inspirations. So
I've played Catan.
So we actually said, okay, how do we take an experience like that and play it with building networks and make it a little more interactive and digitally based. So here are the pieces are actually laid down on the table, and the table recognizes my game pieces, and then it starts building, in this case, websites off of my server. The website spawn traffic that goes through my router back to my client, and I can just try to build out what's probably the most robust network I can. But what's going to happen is, as I build my network out, some of my servers are going to start spawning malicious traffic. And then I've got to figure out, well, how do I keep that traffic from hitting my client? Then I've got to think about playing firewalls, maybe putting a firewall between that router and my client to block the malicious traffic. And I can also do kind of fun things like go over here and link up with his network. But he's got a server there that's going to be spawning some malicious traffic. So maybe if I'm linked up with him, I want to probably throw a firewall here between me and his network, because I don't really want to get that traffic flowing back here to my client.
So when I look at, I see servers, I see routers. Is the only defensive element in this particular game a firewall?
It is, or actually reconfiguring your network in such a way to isolate a down server.
Neat.
And we've been playing this all day, and yesterday, a high score from yesterday was 13,000 points.
How do you score a point?
Every packet that hits your client is 1 point. So that was a lot of packets that he got to his client. So the high scorer was from the Department of Defense, and I'm glad he was our high scorer of the day. So, he will probably come back. I saw him this morning, so he's just obsessed with this game, which is fantastic. He's the kind of person I want to have obsessed with network security.
Great. What are the other exhibits you got?
So we got 2 more. So we'll go around the society as a culture. So this is kind of a simple touchscreen interactive, getting at some of the basics of phishing attacks and getting people to understand ways they can be socially engineered to do things that might not be a good idea. So in this scenario, you're starting work at a new company, and certain things happen, like you find a USB stick on the floor, and you got to decide, well, what do I do with this USB stick? Do I plug it in? Probably a bad idea. Just downloaded some malware onto my computer. Or going through your emails and looking at potential phishing attacks over email. So in this case, something coming from Nigeria and asking you to click a link, and I'm going to put that in the trash. Or in this case, something coming from something that looks close to the company logo, a little bit off. If I click that link, I've been phished. So the idea of spotting things and the consequence if I click on the wrong thing is I get fired. So the whole point of the game is not to get fired. And it teaches some basics, of how to stay safe in a work environment. In this case, you've got a kind of scandalous email in your inbox, and you got to decide, what do you do before you go to lunch? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to minimize that screen, and we're going to get this guy coming along and trying to hack into my computer. And since I just minimized that email window, he's going to forward it to the whole office. So that's kind of embarrassing. So really trying to build on some really common scenarios of some kind of silly things that people do, and trying to get our visitors to understand you might not want to do those.
Great.
And the final piece that we brought today, and these are 3 of 8 we've developed, as well as we've developed a whole immersive game experience. But I wanted to show a few. So Michelle here is demoing our cyber forensics interactive. So what she's doing is examining traffic that's flowing between IP addresses. So she's looking at where it's coming from, where it's going to, and what kind of traffic it is. So if we look at this packet, we can actually look, that one has a malware signature in that packet. So we want to fling that up for a quarantine tool, and we can start to develop some rules to block IP addresses if they're constantly spawning some malicious traffic. And we can actually see like where that one's coming from Brazil, that IP address, and kind of the trend of activity over time. Try to spot suspicious patterns. And so it's kind of hard to look at everything at once. So you want to think about, well, what should I really be looking at? Who is the suspicious actor there? And once again, just building some kind of basic skills around security.
Good. And there's no score for this particular
So
piece.
here is actually a network health bar. So you're trying to achieve a certain degree of network health. And in the exhibit at the tech that we'll have, when you get to a particular level, you gain a credential that then helps you in this final immersive game experience that we're installing. And in that game experience, we're sending you on different missions into a company that's under attack. So you've got to go into the company and you've actually got to figure out who's attacking them, what's going on, how do you help them recover from that attack. And those are leveled experiences. So some are pretty easy, but some are actually ones that would be challenging for attendees of RSA to complete.